Well, it was sorry, left. It was one of the kids going back. Kindergarten, first grade. They just announced it. And
Well, I'm on the way to pitch it.
I think it was the first week of October.
yeah.
You said the mics are on, but I don't have the recorder on yet. No.
That's on the
Yeah, this is on YouTube.
YouTube thing.
Is it? What are we saying? Is that YouTube started yet?
Yeah, David just started. We wanted to make sure it was going to work. So.
It's also
And take a picture. You look very nice, by the way. Thank you. What are we taking a picture of? Oh, since it was just kind of impromptu. If we don't like it, we can do it the next week. But he's got a time.
Nice coat,
He's
Karen.
got a time.
what?
Nice coat.
Oh, thank you. Oh, yeah.
You guys play.
So did you get the scoop on the boyfriend?
The boyfriend.
Remember you texted me?
Oh, yeah. With Lance.
You were with, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm teasing. He's a good kid.
Yeah, he's a good kid. She made a good choice there.
I know.
At least it's a boy. I don't know about Lance, but we won't go there. Was all upset because she saw it still like
I did. Or actually, my husband did. I haven't.
Yep.
this week.
Isn't that funny? I did not drive by it because I went around. I went out to the other part of my neighborhood.
And that's
Not so much. Actually, did one more. He went down. I was walking the back. You don't have to clear mine.
That's right. I agree.
Well, but the best defense is a good
I'd like
offense.
to say hello to Miss Reed, a former board member who's watching.
Oh, no, you can have it.
Steal it from you?
Yeah. Can't steal it because I'm giving it to you. He's a real man.
I had my time with you.
Scary as can come.
I wouldn't say.
We got new phones about 3 weeks ago. And
Honey,
we all got new phones. So he's like, well, we're at the counter and we looked at them over on the shelf. And I said, so which one do you want?
like, I don't care.
I said, I want the Note 20. So over to me. Because it was like, hey, it was this color.
We're gonna make it go that long. If you can take a piece of paper that's like,
It's been my
Sunday
busy.
paper or wrappy paper, cut a square on it, and then, just the part.
Yeah, because he put the case on and he had like this, you can't tell what color it is. Yep, we're good. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
I would have never.
We haven't had it for time.
I'm secure, my man. But
There you go.
it's a mess.
So if you haven't had much,
So Remington's trying to get about this thing.
yeah, it was pretty hard.
Watching the home sales,
Yeah.
it's insane.
One was out in the country.
Hoping that maybe that fact that it's even more homes translated to lose more tax.
Well, what, that is, what, and I noticed when Cheryl was since those interest rates are so low,
Yeah, I know.
people are,
Yeah, no, they
hello,
are.
Beth Reed.
They're moving up.
I already said.
And they're going from like 1.75 on a new home.
What?
Yeah, she
Interest
said she
rate.
expected a shout out this evening.
For a long time.
For how long?
So I just got a new laptop.
I'm not sure about the
How many points? There's gotta be points for
30?
it. How many points?
Between 1 and 2, depending on.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, you could buy it now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
1.75 for 30 years.
I'm gonna have to look that up really.
Why the sales are going through the roof.
Well, we just refinanced ours during the COVID thing on a 10-year at 2.5 fixed rate.
Anyway, I
Should
printed
redo
out
it.
this budget. It was so.
If I can get a full point, I will.
And then I realized that you could increase the size. You printed it small. I could have printed it. You think? May I see that for a moment? Thank you.
My superintendent report is you.
It's me?
It's you. Perfect.
Perfect. I better pull that up because I didn't print out anything on it.
At Dunlop, the Dunlop CUSD.
Yeah, Subkey does rate mods, so that was, I don't know how much time left on mine, so that was pretty good.
God, I was gonna try that.
They did it in one
No
day.
fog and stuff in the game.
Oh, close. It's not working?
Oh, I forgot to try it again. I don't wear masks very often.
I got to pull out my email because I sent it to her.
Hey, Debbie. The board book, did they make everybody change to the upper level?
We bought it for about 4 or 5 months.
Did you?
Yesterday, I wanted to be different, we didn't want it, and then they finally told me we said do it. So they came out and said, well, we're not gonna charge you different, it'll be the same. Everybody has to have their subscription.
Spread out.
And I thought it was no less than 30 superintendent secretaries all over.
Unless I know you really
Nobody
enjoy sitting
wanted
close to Damon, give it a little space.
I'd almost tempted to go back to the old one. It was actually easier. You can't? Oh, they took it all. Oh, I see. Yeah, Teresa doesn't like it. It's amazing. Uh-huh.
What do you have in your resume?
New board.
Figure this stuff out, but it's terrible.
Quickly on there.
I'd like to call this meeting to order and ask that roll be called, please.
Wisdom,
Here.
Wagenbach,
Here.
Humbles,
Here.
Holshouser, here. Henry,
Here.
Disharoon, here. Feldman.
Here.
I'd like to ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first order of business is a public hearing for the 2021 fiscal year budget. May I please have a motion to open the public hearing?
I move to open the public hearing on the FY21 budget.
Thank you, Mrs. Disharoon. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wisdom. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Wisdom,
Aye.
Disharoon,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Holshouser, aye. Humbles,
No.
Wagenbach,
Aye.
Feldman.
Motion carried. Oh, no, he can't vote at this time, but
You can't.
he doesn't have to until he's sworn in, but that's okay.
I take it back.
Motion carried, and the time is 6:03. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the board regarding the budget? May I please have a motion to close the public hearing?
I move to close the public hearing.
Thank you, Mrs. Holzhauser. Second? Mr. Wagenbaum. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Holshouser, aye. Wagenbach,
Aye.
Wisdom,
Aye.
Humbles,
Aye.
Henry, aye. Disharoon.
Aye. Motion carried, 6:04. As you know, we have had a vacant school board position, and after much consideration, we had interest by, I would say, at least 10 very qualified applicants. After a round of interviews and questioning, the board did determine that Mr. Feldman was the one who would be filling that position, and at this time, Mr. Feldman, in your packet is a board member oath of office. And in the past, we've had to stand up and hold our hand and read it in unison, but if you would just like to read the oath of office, if you'd like someone to read it with you, we can, if that makes you feel more comfortable. But everyone in the state of Illinois who gets on the school board does have to take the oath of office. So if you'd like to read the oath of office?
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay.
Do it by myself, too. I, Tom Feldman, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of member of the Board of Education of Dunlap School District in accordance with the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and the laws of the State of Illinois to the best of my ability. I further swear that I shall respect taxpayer interests by serving as a faithful protector of the school district's assets, shall encourage and respect the free expression of opinion by my fellow board members and others who seek a hearing before the board while respecting the privacy of students and employees. I shall recognize that a board member has no legal authority as an individual and that decisions can be made only by a majority vote at a public board meeting, and I shall abide by majority decisions of the board while retaining the right to seek changes in such decisions through ethical and constructive channels.
Very good, thank you very much. I'd like to welcome our new board member, Tom Feldman. The board will now move on to the public participation portion of the meeting. We begin with Dr. Dearman and his superintendent's report.
I personally have no report, but would like to give Mrs. Holzhauser the opportunity to give a district office update.
Debbie's pulling up something here for me now, but as you know, last week we had a little bit of rain in the area, I think about every day. I wasn't in town, but that's what I heard, so that put back some of the outdoor activities there at the district office. But currently, we are on schedule on the inside. We'll make the date that we have. We have about 489,000 invoiced to date. Once again, the progress is on schedule. Drywall completed, the painting's in progress. The back patio you can see in the photo here has been poured. Curbs and gutters were poured this week. The flooring is going to be installed here the week of the 21st. Furniture's been ordered. We're still on time for the estimated completion the first week in October. So it's coming along extremely well. And within another month or so, we will be in there and everything will be going so well. I did want to give a shout out to Debbie, who's been doing a tremendous amount of work with colors, making sure everything is moving along inside the building so we can be in there in October. So do we have any questions from the board members? Yes.
Yeah, I heard that foul balls were going there near, the windows are right along where the foul balls will come.
I cannot comment on that, but I believe we are going to get some netting up for that particular reason. I don't know if you can comment on that.
It's a work in progress, but yes, the windows are a concern there. Pete did order some extras just in case, so that we would have a light if we were ever to need it. But hopefully we can get that netting up and protect that a little bit more.
I think our athletic director is looking into that. Katie, are you getting some estimates and quotes on netting?
He told me to hold off because he had somebody he was working with and he was going to let me know if he needed to do that.
I think you've got plenty of experience in getting quotes on netting.
I can get quotes.
And I don't think it hurts to have more than one bid, so I would encourage you to do that. Please.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Comments? Thank you, Ms. Holzhauser. I can't wait to get in it. I've received a call from several people asking for a tour, and I said, I can't give you a tour, but
Not yet.
not yet. When it gets done, I'm sure there'll
It'll be
be
very
some type of open house or something. Thank you, and thank you, Debbie. I know you've been working so hard, so we do appreciate all your effort as well. If there's nothing else for the superintendent's report, this time we'll move on to public comments. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board? If so, please raise your hand.
You can see we've got one
Oh,
behind you.
come on up, ma'am. Before you address the board, I do have a little statement I have to read, if that's okay. Before addressing the board, I'd like to remind you of our process per board policy 2:230. We ask that when addressing the board, please identify yourself and be brief. Comments shall be limited to 5 minutes. The speaker is asked to please conduct oneself with respect and civility towards others. Individuals less than 18 years of age are permitted to address the board accompanied by a parent or guardian. The board typically does not engage in two-way conversations during the public participation portion of the meeting. Any required follow-up response would be handled by the administration at a later date. To be respectful of others and to protect confidentiality, complaints against individuals, students, staff members, or board members, either named or unnamed, shall not be orally presented to the Board of Education. Such complaints should be put in writing and signed by the person or persons making the charges and delivered to the Board of Education secretary. At this time, I would like to ask anyone who wishes to come forward to address the board, sign the public participation sheet. Then each speaker may come to the podium and begin speaking into the microphone by stating their name and the topic they wish to address. Thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm just coming more for a frustration or a conversation to be started. My son is a student here at the high school. He was pulled from class due to some issues and for quarantined, not just due to the whole being safe. And I understand that, and I'm grateful for that. I am very, though, perplexed and confused as to, he was told one thing verbally, was told he would be sent home with paperwork. He never was. I was then called the day of, about an hour and 45 minutes later after, we can't stop the texting, yes, because the kids have the phones and that's an easy reply. But I was then called an hour and 45 minutes later of the day of by the nurse and said, please come pick up your son, he's in my office. He's sitting right next to me. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Okay, I can tell you I know who my son is, he's sitting next to me. I then, in the course of it, get emails from the school and everything. I am then blocked from returning emails from the school. I am then sent to another principal who ignored my emails or never addressed the questions I was given and never gave me any information until I had to hound to find out how he could get back in to school. I immediately went and we got tested, like the whole family got tested within, for 3 consecutive tests within the time frame. I was told 2 days before he could come back, oh, you have to jump through this hoop to go to get him back into school. I had already placed a call to the district office and had never gotten a return and placed 2 voicemails for that to ask what is going on. It seems the right hand did not know what the left hand's doing. When he got back into school 4 days ago, technically, he was asked point blank by a teacher, how was having COVID? You doing okay? That's a HIPAA violation. My son should not have been drawn out in front of other students for possibly being sick, when he wasn't, but still. When I then call to have it addressed, the principal that I had been sent to did not return my calls or email. I then go to his counselor because she has been nice enough to at least return my calls and say, let me see what I can do, who I can tell you to. And she gets me to a 3rd principal. So the 3rd principal, a different principal I've been talking to. And the only thing they can say, and I understand that, is I'm truly sorry, it will never happen again. It shouldn't have even happened in the first place. That should not have been even a thought. It seems like through this whole thing and maybe it was just my son, but literally nothing was followed. He was pulled from class, he was told one thing about online learning and what would be done. That was totally wrong. He was told he would get a packet of paper when he left saying, you have to do A, B, C, D, E, nothing. Then the school calls and says, my son's still in class when I know he's not. And then I've had to jump through consecutive hoops to get him back in, and then he has a HIPAA violation where the teacher basically calls him out for having this horrible sickness that's going on. That put a stigma on a child who's a very shy child to begin with. And he let it roll off his back, but unfortunately, mom won't. I mean, I don't know if that's unfortunate for the board or for what, but this is ridiculous. It seems the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing, and then you throw something in the middle. I'm just at my frustration because I have nowhere else to go, and I'm not getting any answers. I've been blocked from communicating with the principal. I've been ignored by the other principal, and I've been kowtowed to or blown off by the 3rd principal. frustration has set in. And I just, want, and I've been ignored by the district office, where I've called the district office and left voicemails to just ask for some clarification. I would just like that to be aware and be noted that, thank you, gosh, or whoever, that we don't have any more cases and that quarantine is down due to the information, but are other kids being treated this way? Is other things falling through the hoops? Is it just my son? And if so, what has he done to make the administration so upset with him? And I even asked that question, and I got ignored. So that is just my statement, so to speak, and so you guys know what is going on, and it being made public, that obviously within the last 2 weeks, yes, I know give grace, but it didn't even seem like they had a plan in place. That's all I'm asking, and I appreciate you guys listening. Thank you.
Thank you. We will have someone from the district office send a response.
Sure.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the board today? This concludes the, I'm sorry? She gave her name. I'm sorry, ma'am, can we get your name, please?
My name is Erica Pop.
Erica Potts?
Yes, I heard it all.
Okay, thank you so much. This concludes the public participation portion of the meeting. The board will now move on to the information discussion items. The school activity account reports are included in the packet. Are there any questions? Information regarding summer school 2020 is in the packet. Are there any questions?
I have a question. I was just wondering, I know, of course, there were special circumstances, but how does this compare to numbers from last year? Okay. I know that there were obviously special circumstances this year and we can expect a decline, but how do the summer school numbers from this summer compare to last summer?
Not equal.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, okay. And then I guess my other question is, when we met as a committee, I think it was right at the beginning of COVID, to talk about whether or not we were going to expand summer school. We did discuss that there wasn't time at that point for, us to put in place all the procedures and plans, but that we might look at it for next summer. And so while we are still far out from that time, I would suggest that we do look at that. I think there are a lot of people in the district who would take advantage of that. They send their kids to Bradley, to ICC, to OSF, to many other camps. And I think that having one really close would be really used. And I also think it's a way to keep, a lot of kids engaged, maybe get them introduced to some other topic, increase STEM. I mean, we had some really interesting proposals come forward from teachers to teach some summer classes. And so I would just like to see that. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I would like to see us explore that. And then the other thing that came up when we were discussing that was the pay of the summer classes. And it's very, very low pay for the teachers. And it's not much of a cost to the district because we pass on the cost to taxpayers and they pay for the class or for the camp. So
You mean the parents of the students?
Parents of the students pay. And then if a student is on free lunch, right, then they don't have to pay.
It's reduced. It's unpaid.
Oh, it's reduced, okay. So anyway, I would like to explore increasing that because I think it would get more people interested in it and open up opportunities maybe for other offerings. So I propose that there be some committee to look at that and develop a plan. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a good idea. I think they're underpaid. And if we can make it a larger incentive, I think we may have more class offerings. I can tell you right now, the enthusiasm to expand that on our own teachers' part is minimal. Because they're all overwhelmed with the remote stuff going on right now. So they're not entertaining anything new. But I do think if we spoke this past summer that if we were to increase that hourly wage, we would get more opportunities for our students.
If we can reach out to other teachers, right, in
Yeah.
other districts, yeah,
But we have to develop it first,
sure.
and that's usually by one of our teachers developing it.
Okay, any other discussion on that particular topic?
Is anybody else interested in forming a committee and looking at this?
I think it would be a great idea. I mean, I don't know if it has to be a board committee,
No, it doesn't.
but I think, if Dr. Adrian and those that are interested in that particular idea of curriculum, I think that'd be a great idea.
And I think it'd be good to do, we've only done the high school, but I think it'd be great to do, I know the middle school did the math this summer. How did that go? Oh, yeah, it was remote, yeah. So, I think it'd be great to expand it to elementary and build on middle school.
So Karen, if I might suggest, we might want to talk about pay proposal at the next meeting and then entertain additional courses at the November meeting.
Sure.
That would work for your family.
I know that a lot of times they just fill up, so even if it were some of the same classes, if there were just more offerings of even the same class, would be helpful as well.
Well, we offer every section that's full. I mean,
that's what I'm
if
saying.
it's less than 15, we don't offer.
Yeah, they already opened it up for
Yeah.
another one if they have enough to make a class.
Oh, I thought okay, well, it was later this year that people
There were
wanted
a
to
few
get
that
in and
didn't
they
go
were
because
filled.
there was 7 or 8 that might sign up for a class. We can't offer for 7 or 8.
We have kind of a rule that we don't offer classes
Right.
at rate. Plus, there wouldn't have been enough pay to cover the teacher.
Exactly.
Well, this occurred because at first it filled up and then COVID hit and then more people wanted to come, but they were already filled and they couldn't get more teachers at that point. That's what happened this year. It was an unusual circumstance.
All right then.
It's all we can do to find teachers to fill those spots. You have the timeline, but under the terms like that. And we had one design at the last minute that she didn't want to do remote in the summer, and she knew she had to do it in the fall. So we were very fortunate to get someone else to fill it. So it's not easy to fill those.
Any further discussion? All right then. Information regarding advanced placement results is in the board packet. Are there any questions?
I have the same question. How do these scores compare to the past?
They're very comparable to the previous years. Like I said, we like to have that national data, and if that becomes available, we'll include that in the future. I'm very pleased to look at some of those individual scores for the classes. They're very good, right on that 4-point scale, 4-point score. The one that's interesting is the BC calculus, which you guys know is the second portion of the BC calculus.
Right.
It's higher than the AB. It's kind of a little bit of a frustration for Mr. Olson because all of our capable students who should be really taking AB take BC and they skip AB. So then we have those students who are kind of questioning whether they should be calculus at all going to AB. That's why those scores are a little bit lower. But that is what it is. They work out better for completion of BC than they do for AB. But yeah, I'm pleased. I mean, some of those same teachers continue to pump out those 4s and above. I mean, like Mr. Nestor, they the computer science second year who offered it. And last year he was at a 4-point, I believe average, and this year right there. Mrs. Apollo is always a bit 4 above in Spanish. The French is always high. AP Chem is always high. I mean, they're just strong.
I didn't see psychology on there.
Wonder why that would be. Maybe you got a bit of that. I'm not sure.
I also think it would have been interesting, not that I want you to go back and do a whole lot more work, but you had the numbers of students, but it would have been interesting to me to know of those numbers, what percentage is that of that particular subgroup. So if you had 10 kids taking it from one subgroup, what percentage of that is of the total group of children in that particular ethnicity or whatever? That would have been interesting for me to see because
Sometimes, or some factor that skews our scores is we are a hub for other schools to take their AP exams here.
oh, okay.
So that sometimes is not always indicative of our student scores. And a lot of times they can actually take an AP test without having took the class. So that would obviously lower that score as well. So there's a lot of anomalies
here at the building.
But the class itself would be strictly here.
Yes,
So if you had just the number of students that took
Correct,
it
this is
here.
a testing location.
Right.
Okay. And is there any way to break it out so we know how just our kids are doing?
You can, and it can be difficult, you can.
Any further questions?
I have a question. What, on that slide, I think you were referring to that, Abby, the last one about the student demographics.
Yes.
What's the relevance of the ethnicity of the different
Well, it's very
subgroups?
similar to what they do on a school report card. They'll want to know that we're making sure that we're being fair and equal to all our students. And so I don't know what it is in this report, if that has to be done that way as well via the state, or that was just how you chose to do it. But it reminds me of the report card data that will have those subgroups listed.
We include that to make sure that these numbers are representative of our own demographics. And last year, we actually did a study with a firm called Equal Opportunity Schools that tries to ensure that your number of students, percent of students that are taking the AP exam was, for instance, if it is, let's just say it's 26% of our white students are taking the AP exam, we want 26% of every demographic taking those exams. And we went that study with them. They were hoping to get our services to figure out a way to do that, but they realized when they did all the research that we are pretty closely aligned with that, and the gap wasn't large enough to warrant us spending that kind of money on that firm's guidance.
To Abby's point, though, I mean, without the denominator, right, or the total for each subgroup, I mean, the raw numbers, I mean, ostensibly we have more white kids than anything else, so it really doesn't tell you a whole lot, right, the breakdown without the denominator.
Right.
Okay.
I was comparing it to the school report card where they have some of these demographics. I think it would be helpful if it were broken out by grade. I think you have you do have the percentage, the numbers. And also it has in here the dual credits. They're both counted as early college. Is that something you're going to show later? Because I think this is part of the way we're scored on the report card. I guess it would be helpful if we're kind of run in the same format as how we're graded.
That's how it is on Illinois report card.
Yeah, well, in Illinois report card, they have it by grade, they have it by percentage for early college, and then they have it broken down by AP, and they have it broken down by dual credit. So you can kind of see where it all is. It just helps to have the apples to apples, to see how we're doing. Because then we can look at it, we can, draw the line. Are we getting more students taking these AP courses? Are we getting more taking the dual credit? So in the report card, it goes back to 2016. It would just help to have a line graph to kind of see where we are
So how we compared to last year.
in the year before. Because I believe it's one of the, they have this big thing of how we're scored, and I believe this is part of it.
And that's something we typically include in the report card presentation we give in November, once the updated report card is. I think this is just in response to the published scores from the College Report
Okay.
on AP exam, so that's why you don't have to go back and do it.
So that would happen in November then?
That's what we do.
Okay.
Any further questions? Information and discussion will now be had regarding the FY22 budget targets. And I believe that would be Dr. Dearman's.
Yeah, I think Mr. Hackett's actually listed on there because he is our chief school business official, but I wanted to kind of address this one myself and kind of have a conversation regarding the budget and some of the decisions we're going to be making based on that budget. At this time, we know where we're at and have discussed many times our financial situation. And some decisions are going to be made here in the near future that are really going to define who we are as an institution academically and educationally. And they're important decisions, no doubt. I think to start having too many in-depth conversations right now is a little premature. So I'd like to do is just kind of give some reasons why I believe that is, and then give a recommendation for a plan moving forward. The reasons I think it's a little premature, 3 months ago, we had the financial projections, and we spent a lot of time going through different scenarios with those, and we really haven't revisited those since. And we need to, because some things have changed since we went through those. A perfect example is the sales tax money. And we budgeted a certain amount, assuming we didn't know where things may go with the COVID situation. And it has been much better than anticipated. For example, this month's distribution was within $4,000 of what it was last year at this exact same time. 117,000 versus 121,000. So that's good news. Some other information we need to look at, property tax collections. We budgeted on that scenario a 95% collection rate because you could defer your payments and we were wondering how that would impact our bottom line. So we budgeted at 95%. Each 1% that we collect above that is about $250,000. So we budgeted at 95, but if it comes in at 96, 97, 98, or 99%, or even 100%, you're looking at anywhere from $250,000 to $1 million or more. And that will dramatically change our conversation at that time. EAV change. We just talked to the county assessor's office yesterday and got some updated information on EAV that I think we need to discuss as part of that financial projection as well. As we know, there's a fair tax issue that's going to be on the ballot. That's very much tied by our governor to our evidence-based funding. We need to have a conversation of if it does or does not pass, what does that mean for our budget? Have that conversation. I believe it was 2 years ago I gave a report on minimum wage and how that has now, in the first year it didn't really impact us much because we were paying above that threshold, but it is now starting to impact us, and as time progresses each year and we get closer to that $15 an hour minimum wage requirement, what impact will that have on our budget? We need to look into that. We have a finance committee that met, but it's primarily around the return to school. But we need to have that committee reconvene and have some discussions as well. We also need to have some hard timelines. The board needs to be aware of when do we have to have these decisions made? Well, that decision has to be made at our February board meeting as an information item and an action in March. So we're still 6 months out from when the final decision has to be made. So we've got some time. We're not up against it. This year's audit hasn't even been complete and reported yet. That should be next month from Gorham. So we'd like to have information. How did we do last year so that we have the full information? And then some other suggestions have come up in the meantime. Mrs. Disharoon had a suggestion about some fund transfers. Are there some funds that we can take some of the fund balance where we have more money and transfer it into a fund that maybe needs more money? That's certainly something we could look at that we just haven't had an opportunity to. So my recommendation is this, that this is such an important decision that I think it should be a committee as a whole. Everybody needs to have the same information and the same data to make an informed decision. So that's my first recommendation. Let's do this as a committee as a whole, and then next month I will bring to you a timeline of step-by-step approach to this so that when we do it, we are doing it in the right order, at the right time, with the right information to make the best decision possible as we move forward.
Any questions or comments about what Dr. Dearman has just reported?
Yeah, I have some comments on this. We just passed a budget that's $5 million in the red. We all held our nose and we passed it because we frankly didn't have any choice. Legally, we were required to pass a budget, so we did. I don't think time is on our side. We're going to have to make cuts, period, in the story. We're going to have to figure out the least painful way we can do that. And I don't think we need to wait to get a bunch of information from this, that, or the other. We need to start looking at possibilities now and digging into this. I'm almost tempted to think we don't wait until our next board meeting. We schedule a meeting in 2 weeks. We start digging into this hard. I don't want to get bumped up against deadlines and have to make rush decisions because we're waiting to see what that turns out, or this entity is doing, or some other group is doing. We need to start looking at what we're going to do. So I'm not in favor of delaying this.
What decision is so imminent?
I don't know.
I think it's just hard to decide what to cut, right? I mean, I feel like we're a pretty lean district, and so it's just a hard decision to make. And the other thing I think that when you're doing this, you kind of have to decide who we want to be as a district. And you know, because you just can't do everything. And so that, you know, it just takes a little bit of time, I think, to.
You know, I think we know who we want to be as a school district, and then nothing we do is going to change that. It's a question of how we're going to stay at the top with the revenue streams that are available.
Right, but it's a question of priorities, because you can't do everything. And so, I mean, undoubtedly, when you cut one thing, you're saying that is not as much a priority as another thing. So, I mean, that's my only, I guess it's the same discussion probably. We're probably mincing words, but
Yeah.
it's just a discussion of all the different options and which ones, you know,
Well,
which ones are most palatable.
it's the middle of September. We've got the holidays. We've got COVID going on. Things are changing all over the place. February is going to be here much sooner than we think.
I agree. February will be here very quickly. And nobody thinks that we're going to be able to resolve a $5 million deficit in 1 year. But I think we need to really start chipping away and tightening our belts. And, you know, as small as it may be, just simple things like, you know, when you mention, I mentioned the, you know, school board convention. Of course, that's not going to happen this year, but everything adds up. And people say, well, that's not going to save, you know, the budget. That's not going to bring millions of dollars. No. But we need, it's perception, it's living within our means, and I think that's something that, you know, all our taxpayers and any of us would like to do. Very few of us go out and mortgage our home for extras. But it'll be difficult conversations we do have to have. I will say in our finance committee, our administrators came back with some very valid and good ideas and suggestions, and of course they're going to be a little bit painful, but I was very proud of our administrative team and how they contributed to that discussion. So, anyone else have any comments?
I just want to echo what Mike said as well. I think everyone knows where we're at. About close to 3 last year, we'll be 5 this year. It adds up very quick. We need to, and especially since Tom's on the board now, to understand exactly what we're up against as far as what increases we have, what we can do. And I think that's sooner rather than later. This year, we've only got a few months left of this year. It'll be February before we know it. So the sooner the better.
I agree, and if there needs to be a preliminary meeting prior to a committee of the whole, I'm willing to do that. I have had discussions with Mr. Feldman, and I asked if he would be interested in helping to serve in that capacity, and one of us could be ad hoc member, but I think it would be good to have his expertise in dealing with budget as well. So we'll address that at a later time. But anyone else have anything to say?
But, you know, and if I could just
Sure,
ask or
absolutely.
clarify that. So I heard Dr. Dearman talk about, you know, bringing back some information and a timeline at the next month's meeting, but then I heard Mike say that he'd like to get together in a couple of weeks. So I guess, Dr. Dearman, is there something that, you know, you could have, or maybe we could review that information, Abby, that you were just talking about, the suggestions from those groups that already got back to you, and then circle back and meet with Dr. Dearman before that next monthly meeting so we could start getting into it?
So you would like them to forward the ideas. Now, these are just ideas that
I get that. I'm just trying to clarify. When Dr. Dearman said a month, you know, Mike said, I want to do something in a couple of weeks.
And I said if we went
Then you
in
said
prior.
that I'd be willing to do it, and I am, but I'm just trying to clarify which path we're going down.
The reason I said a month, in October, we'll have Gorins here to present our audit of how things actually turned out last year. We should also have at that time our actual tax report of how much money of that 95% that we budgeted, how much did we really get that came in. We'll have some hard data at that time. And at that meeting, that still gives us, I mean, even if we wanted to get done 3 months early, I see no reason why this can't be done by the first of the year.
But we do know what our expenses pretty much are going to be. We do know what our salaries will be, and so those things are things that probably are not going to change. But anyway, if we could get the lists that were presented at the meeting may be forwarded to the board so that they can see
Sure.
what that committee discussed. And then we can check with each other's
And I
schedules and
think,
see if
you
we
know,
can.
it's only a month off, so even if we're a little bit off on where we are in terms of our budget, we should have a pretty good idea, and we also should have a pretty good idea of how much money we're getting in, right? from the-
Sure.
So whatever we have at that point, if we could just know what it is and how far into the budget, then we can figure out pretty closely what those numbers are gonna be.
Very good.
None of this external information is going to balance our budget. We're still going to have a massive hole in our budget. And I think we need to start thinking hard about what we can do for efficiencies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What we can get by without that we haven't in the past. We need to start looking at what those are and what that can translate into savings for the district. And I'm not sure that we need to wait a month to start that process. That should be internal, and it should be going on right now. We know it's going to be a huge hole, but we can't keep going on with that kind of a hole. Next year's hole, if we do nothing, won't be 5 million, it'll be 6.5 million.
But
Or
we've
more.
already done some of those things, Mike. I mean, we delayed the purchase of buses, we delayed the purchase of textbooks. That isn't going to change in the next 2 weeks. My concern is
And
if
those things
something
are not
happens as
going
what
to-
happened before, where
Those-
cuts were made without thinking it through, AKA our bus driver situation, where we slashed that and then we lost our entire sub pool, and then we had to turn around and reverse the decision and increase the pay to get them to come back. Those unintended consequences, I'd like to hash that out before we make that decision.
Well, I think we can have a conversation without actually taking action.
Right.
We can still have a conversation, but why don't we forward that information to the board? We'll continue this discussion on if we're going to have a meeting or set a date after we look at everyone's schedules. Does that sound fair?
So we'll have a committee of the whole, it'll be a committee of the whole meeting?
Well, that's what Dr. Dearman is suggesting.
I agree with that. I think that this is an important issue and it needs to be transparent and therefore under the Open Meetings Act and, you know, people need to be able to participate, so.
Sure. Sounds good.
And I'd be fine with the first one being in 2 weeks.
I think another reason to move forward is we don't know what the future's gonna bring with the flu and the COVID. I mean, who knows what's gonna happen by Thanksgiving?
Good point.
So I think we should get moving while we still have healthy bodies at the table.
I think the question is, if we're going to have a meeting in 2 weeks, what are we going to talk about? It doesn't do any good if we just get together. And, well, you know, we need to start getting some information from the administration, some ideas, feedback on what we can be starting to look at.
And we have that information now, so perhaps we could take a look at that before then, and at the meeting we can discuss it further.
Okay.
And I think also it'd be great for us to have the opportunity to just ask a bunch of questions and maybe talk about what information we want. I know, Mike, you talked about wanting, you know, how many kids are in each of the classes. You know, that sort of information. Maybe there's other information that we would want to gather. We can ask those questions and talk about what information we need to make better decisions.
And if there's other information that you would like prior to that, you could also send an email and request that. All right, we ready to move on? Information regarding remote learning is included in the packet. Are there any questions?
Was there anything in the packet about remote learning?
presentation?
I didn't see it.
Well, it says here it was in the packet. I didn't see
It's an
anything
oral
in the
update,
packet.
So, just an update as to where we're at with remote learning. Currently, a few weeks ago, did a survey out to our teaching staff to see how things are going for the teaching end. We also have emailed parents out an update last Friday and asked for some survey feedback so that we can analyze that as we're about 4 weeks in to the school year at that time. And then we have been, today we had an optional PLC where we have professional development on more remote technology tools and utilizing
discuss this, and I guess I just sense some concern with some of the principals and their updates that there's a group of students who are not engaged and not, performing up to, where they would be if they were in person. So I just wondered if we have can we get any data on that? Like how many kids are not, what's the attendance numbers? How many kids are missing tests? How many kids are missing homework? How many kids are not engaging at the time with their teachers? I don't know what the data is, but just something to kind of explain, what the situation is. And then I guess I'm wondering personally, should there be some sort of a communication out to explain this problem? I feel like some parents I know, I'm probably this boat, when you have a high school student, you're not there watching them every second, so you don't know if they're really doing the work and, doing what they're supposed to be doing all the time. And so maybe if we had some aggregate data, I'm just brainstorming, what do you think of that? Are you concerned about a group of students not participating?
Absolutely. We want to make sure we're reaching all of our students and providing those supports. That was one of our conversations last week as building administrators, and I know the high school and the middle schools and then the elementary, we talked about it at all the different levels in terms of tracking students, not just for attendance, we have those measures, but then also our students who maybe aren't getting work completed, aren't doing assessments, aren't having those pieces of the important educational experiences for their learning completed, and then taking the measures in terms of making sure the teacher is contacted home, going through that either through email or a phone call, and then having a system where we're tracking that, and then the counselor offering another layer of support to offer if there's any assistance that might be needed, if there's anything we can do to help, and then another opportunity if we're not making some progress there towards engagement, in terms of getting work completed, assessments done, administrators making some phone calls. It's very similarly to if we had a student in the classroom in person, who was putting their head down or was not engaged, like going through the different measures to make sure that learning is occurring.
Right.
So,
And I guess, I have a question. Okay. We talked about having some peer tutors for some of these students that perhaps, how's that, have we worked on that? We had talked about it, I think Dr. Adrian was here, we spoke to him about maybe matching some students up with peer student tutors. Have we had any progress in that?
No progress on that yet.
They were gonna get some extra credit
Still
hours.
working on that with the NHS and lining up available times. What Ms. Maggie said, we've got about 25 to 30% of our remote learners that aren't engaged.
Are not?
Are not.
Oh my gosh.
And
What was the percent, what did you say?
25 to 30% of those right now are not engaged.
Of the remote learners,
And the
25%.
remote learners, That's a
Okay.
real problem.
And we have 25% are remote learners.
Yes.
Are you saying 25%
Yeah,
of those
around
that?
100 to 125 of those students are not engaging in the learning process.
And how many of those would not be engaged if they were in person about?
Well, of this list of students that we're pretty familiar with, I'd say all of them, most of them were able to manage to get their credits in the in-person round. But now without the constant monitoring and lack of better term, badgering to get stuff turned in, they are falling through the cracks, and it's a real concern. I know I've talked to a couple of you about that. The best place for them is at school. And unfortunately, I think they're remote for different reasons, but the same result, they're struggling.
When you're talking about the National Honor Society, that's what you meant by NHS, can that be expanded? Because if you've got this many kids that need help, I mean, you can have sophomores that are upper level that could be tutoring as well.
Yeah, but isn't this a group that it's going to be hard for kids to
Yeah.
tutor them?
I mean, they're not returning the teachers' emails, they're not
They
returning
don't
counseling
want to,
emails.
they
so
don't
it's
want to be engaged,
They're
they're
not
not going to engage
No
with
tutor is
students.
going to, unless.
Well, I don't know, it's peers, they might.
Sometimes.
I mean, sometimes they respond better.
I'm just wondering if maybe there's something else we need to do, maybe as a board or as a district, to communicate to the parent community that we're losing kids that we weren't losing before, and maybe you need to consider having these kids be in person, because the data is showing that they're falling through the cracks.
That's where we're at right now, Karen, as far as that, and making calls to.
Okay.
It's a progression. We've got a spreadsheet, and it's the teachers making calls to contact home, explaining what they're missing, what they're not doing. That way the counselor knows, and the counselor can call home and report on that. And then once we know that the teachers and the counselors call home, and we're still not getting any progress, then we call home and say, look, this is what's got to be done. Maybe you should return to in-person learning. We can help this before it gets way too late.
And that's happened at the high school level. I know specifically in talking with elementary, they've had some conversations with some students where it might be best to come back in person so that some of those additional supports can be offered, and keeping an eye on those students as well. And so.
But there's no way we can really force it.
No, but if it's a, we're seeing a struggle, like how can we support? Is there anything else we can do? I know like this week you reached out to me about hotspot for students, some of the different building admins, some remote students needing like a wireless hotspot so that they have those the full internet capabilities all day long. So making sure that some of those just things that are basic necessities to do the remote learning are occurring too. As part of the communication last Friday too, was just reminders to students and some more emphasis points on assessments and how to practice remote learning from home as those updates, as teachers have been noticing things in classrooms, administrators have been knowing, just reminders on what that environment should be looking like. And so that was another attempt too, is that communication. But it is, I know we've talked about it at every level. We are concerned about those learners, and we want to make sure that they're engaging in that process. So.
And the other end of the spectrum is our teachers who are doing this are wearing out quickly.
I bet.
It is not just the teaching and the making the videos. It is the burden and tiresome nature of making calls and continuously emailing and continuously reaching out and chasing kids down to turn things in or to engage.
And it's harder to do via the phone or the internet versus, grabbing them in the
So,
hallway.
yeah, because you know what, when they're here, it's a team effort.
Right.
I can grab them, the counselor can grab them, the social worker can grab them, the mental health wellness counselor can grab them, we can all say, hey, you good, I got to turn it, so it's a team effort. The assistants, Ms. Bagby, Mr. Johnson, in previous years, they would always have kids in there making sure they got it done. Hey, you come in, you're going to take that test. That's not there.
Well, I think you really, until you have the parent support, I think it's going to continue to be difficult unless, the mode of education changes, so.
So the parents and the students, neither one have a fear of failing? That's not, the parents and the students, none have a fear of failing, these kids?
Are they afraid of failing?
They must not care.
No, apparently not. But what I want you to know is we're actively trying to figure out a way to get them in school. If we can't this semester, we'd love to have a proposal to you to help us bring them back in the spring semester. If our numbers continue to stay where they are, knock on wood, there's really no reason why they can't be here learning.
Right.
We will be most anxious to hear that recommendation from
Absolutely.
Dr.
Yeah,
Abraham.
and the earlier the better.
Indeed.
Are there spots now to bring them back? I mean, I know before, everything was so full. Have you been able to bring any back? Can you get them back into the classroom? Is there a seat for them?
The in-person classrooms,
Yeah,
are they full?
yes.
No.
And I will say at the high school level, the elementary level, we would want to carefully look at that. Some of those sections are already at 25 or 30 for the in-person, and being very careful at the elementary not to have, before a plan is put into place, to have a huge influx come back. We still do have some that trickle in 1 or 2 a week, depending on the building that come back, but
The high school is the biggest issue.
yeah, and so the high school would have, I just want to make sure.
Right,
that
right.
for the other
I'm glad
levels,
you clarified. Right.
advocate the high school would have.
Because of the,
For example, we had 5 students come back in person today.
that's
And we had more last week. So, and I wanted to have those numbers for the week for you guys to say, hey, this is what the trend is now. And I think that's normal, right? I mean, they're seeing the numbers, they're struggling outside, so they think maybe it's not so bad to come in person. So I'm hopeful, fingers crossed, that we're going to get more and more of those kids returned. We do have space for them at DHS in the classroom. It was the remote sections, as you recall,
Right.
that were becoming full. So I'm optimistic about that, but I mean, we're going to bring you something because we
Dr. Adrian, and so that we don't have to wait until we get those numbers, can you give us a general idea of what the trend is on remote learning? Is it stable? Is it going up? Is it going
Well, it was
down?
going up, but now it's just starting to come back. The numbers are going to go down.
Are we at the same level we were at the beginning of the year?
I can't answer that, I'm sorry. I don't know.
Oh.
Sure, we're going to give you an answer.
Thank you, Dr. Adrian.
Yeah.
Any other questions regarding
Oh, I have
this
one more.
topic? You only get one more, Karen. I'm
No.
limiting your question.
Only get one more.
Good
Only
luck with
one
that.
I take it we're still doing well on keeping transmissions of COVID down, because our numbers are going way down. Is that still the case that the transmission?
DHS, yes, knock on wood. You know, obviously, Karen, we're worried about Thanksgiving break. When college students
Yes,
come back, you
I
know, that's a big concern of ours. But knock on wood, this week so far, as of this day and time, it's good.
Is the lockers gonna be back open again for winter or not?
We haven't even gotten that.
Are we not gonna talk about that? You're
Not
not,
that it's I'm not saying it's not an option, but we haven't thought about that yet.
So what will be, this is my other question.
No, you only got one more.
No, what's the timeline gonna be for deciding what to do for second semester?
Well, I think we need to look at, the big concern in the talk with the ROE and the area superintendents is we're still about a month out from traditional flu season. And if you look at the symptoms for COVID versus the symptoms for a normal cold flu, they're the same. So IDPH is aware of that. They're telling us they're going to come out, I mean, they changed guidance again Thursday. That they'll be coming up with something to help us decipher or do something with that season, but that's the big concern. And there is no answer that's been given yet. It's just a concern that everyone has that we're needing an answer for, but we don't have.
Well, there's some talk too that maybe the flu will be less if people are social distancing and wearing their masks, but it's too early, I guess, to tell.
Well,
By the
maybe-
way,
maybe
CVS,
it
you can
won't
get
be
your
as
flu
bad.
shots now.
People have masks on, maybe it won't be as bad.
Everybody get your flu shots. Yes, they're open.
Well, I'm just concerned that, you know, last year in Mr. Etnire's building, I wish he was here, it'd be a perfect example. He had one classroom that I think he had like 12 or 14 kids out of 26. This is January-ish. Kids sick because they had the flu and kids spread things. And, you know, the one thing that the Department of Public Health has said time and time again that will shut us down is an uncontrolled outbreak. Well, is that an uncontrolled outbreak, or is that just what happens with little kids in the flu because they swap germs? Hopefully, with the mitigating factors we have in place, that won't happen and we're going to lessen that. But that's a real concern that I have, that they're going to jump on that normal flu season, and the numbers that we've been demonstrating that have been solid and consistent and improving are going to be thrown out the window.
With that, if I can jump in too, we've got changing weather, we've got kids going outside all the time now. Winter comes, won't be doing that. So there's a lot of complicating factors involved with this.
Sure.
Has there been any talk from the health department about, I know you're right now at 6 foot and 15 minutes and then you're out for quarantine for 2 weeks. Has there been any talk that if you have your mask on, that they will change that? Because I think part of the reason it's not spreading internally is because they're wearing those masks. Are they still
There's
telling
been
the
no
line?
conversation that I'm aware of around that.
No, okay.
Any further questions? Okay, the information regarding board policy updates are included in the board packet. Are there any questions?
I move to table the discussion of,
We don't have a motion.
oh, so what do we do?
Yeah, we are going to table it. Would you like to tell the rest of the board why?
Yes, because we got our new board book and we're trying to work that out. We didn't get all the information that we would normally get with the footnotes, and we just want to have complete information, and by next month, it'll all be good.
Thank you.
So will it be an information item again next week?
Yeah.
Next month?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. We're going to move on now to the consent agenda. Are there any questions or discussion regarding items that are on the consent agenda?
Were the minutes on here? Forgot.
Yes.
I'm just left out of attending on minutes.
Okay, would you let Debbie know and she can fix that?
Yeah, sorry, I just noticed it, yeah. what do you need? I can't remember, I think it was August.
Okay,
She wasn't listed as present,
no problem.
but she made a couple motions. I think she was present.
Yes, no question.
May I please have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Wisdom. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Disharum. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Wisdom.
Aye.
Disharum. Henry.
Aye.
Olshauser. Aye. Humbles.
Aye.
Wagonbach.
Aye.
Feldman.
Aye.
Motion carried. The board will now move on to the action items. Bill list, treasurer's report, and district investment report is included in the board packet. Are there any questions?
I had a question on one of the bills. There was a mileage for $750 for Tom Graham. Is that 1 month or is that multiple months, do you know?
That's multiple months. I believe that was, what, 3 months, Damon?
Probably,
I think it's summer.
Okay.
Typically, we submit this once a semester.
Oh, once a semester?
Well, no, I mean, it depends on the person. It wasn't for a semester, I don't know. It was probably for a couple of months. I can go back and look.
And is it mileage? Is it so much a mile?
It's IRS rate.
It's what, I'm sorry?
IRS
Okay.
determines the rate,
Okay.
May I have
55
a,
and a half.
Wait, I have a question.
okay?
A couple things. One, I was just confused. I was thinking we approved for the money to be invested in short-term investments. And
And you'll see that starting with the next one.
next
It'll be reflected on the September bank.
Okay. And then, Tom had a great idea to help us kind of realize what we're looking at when we look at these quarterly reports. And that's to show where we were the previous year. Tell me if I'm saying this wrong. It's a great idea you had. Is there a way to put on this report
We'll just leave it at that. It was a great idea.
and the next one, where we were this time last year? Just so we have some context, because when we look at these numbers, they don't really mean much to you if you don't figure out the percentages, and that's a lot of work.
I can, yeah, you're kind of saying what I said, Karen. It was a question that I had asked. I had asked during the interviewing process here, and I don't think it's that sheet though, but
Okay.
I can reach out to you,
Okay.
David, was what I'm talking about. But instead of, like at the last meeting, when I came, you had a 4-page packet of information, and it seemed like on the one where you had the summary of each fund,
You showed the budget, yes.
right, you showed it against last year. Then I think when you went into the next 3, it showed the detail of those funds, but it was just for, I think it was just the budget number that I was looking at. It just showed on pages like 2 through 4, it just showed the breakout, the detail, and it just showed as the budget, but it didn't show it against last year or actual. So I was just looking for some sort of comparative, but I'll reach out to you on that.
Yeah, and I found the same thing on this report. It has August. It has August, so, I don't know what August should be. So if it could be where we were for August the previous year, can we do that?
Yeah, so that was the other thing we talked about. Instead of a consecutive month, I mean, there is, I believe there's seasonality, right, to some of the expenses and revenues associated with the district, as in a lot of different businesses. And so instead of looking, consecutively or rolling months, looking at that period from the prior year in that same month, then that gives you a better snapshot versus the prior month, because there might be some annual things, be it expense or revenue, that occurs, and then the 2 months are not equal. But the one from, now this year, it's kind of a bad idea this year, because against last year, there's a lot of different things in a COVID year. But typically, though, if you look at the exact same period from the year prior, it might jive a little bit better than just say a consecutive month.
Tom, in the private world, and I know you've seen this, when you're looking at reports, whether they be monthly or quarterly, you see them in terms of what is actual and then a comparison of the budget and what the differential is. I think that's another thing that would be helpful to us if we could start to move toward that, because we don't really find out until way, way off into the future how we're faring compared to what our budget projections are for any given time during the year. So I'd like you to consider trying to work something like that in as well, knowing that some of these things are seasonal. It's not just a 1/12 each month.
And so I think it is
It's on the bottom.
at the
In
bottom.
the year-to-date, it'll say percentage of, for this year, how much has been realized as far as revenue and expenditures. It'll
Right,
say,
it's just that you gotta then do the calculation in your head of how many months are we in, so what's the percentage be, do you know what I'm saying?
yes, I do. I understand.
We'll get together.
Okay, may I please have a motion?
I move to approve,
Pay the bills.
I move to approve the payment of the bills in the amount of $4,339,587.27 as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Wagenbaum. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Henry. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Wagenbach,
Yes, aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Holzhauser,
Aye.
Humbles,
Aye.
Wisdom,
Aye.
Feldman,
Aye.
Disharum.
Aye. Motion carried. Earlier this evening, the board held a public hearing regarding the FY21 budget. At this time, I would like to ask for a motion to approve the adoption of the budget.
I move to approve the adoption of the FY21 budget as presented.
Thank you, Mrs. Disharum. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Holzhauser. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Disharum,
Aye.
Holzhauser,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Feldman,
Aye.
Humbles,
No.
Wagenbach,
Aye.
Wisdom.
Aye.
Motion carried. Information regarding the property tax appeal is included in the board packet. Are there any questions?
Abby, I do have a question.
Sure.
And I couldn't get into the board packet from the other board book. So last month, did we have, was this an information item? Maybe you know, David.
No, they're always action items that were at the time.
Because I thought there were 4. Were there 4 last month that we looked at? There were 6. Okay, so that was separate, and this is an additional one. Okay. That was my only question.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? May I please have a motion to approve the appeal?
I move to approve the property tax appeal as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Wagenbaugh. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Disharum. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Wagenbach,
Aye.
Disharum, Feldman,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Holzhauser,
Aye.
Humbles,
Aye.
Wisdom.
Aye.
Motion carried. Information regarding investment advisory agreement is included in the packet. Are there any questions? May I please have a motion to approve the agreement?
I move to approve the investment advisory agreement as presented.
Thank you, Mrs. Henry. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wisdom. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Henry,
Aye.
Wisdom,
Aye.
Wagenbach,
Aye.
Humbles,
Aye.
Holzhauser,
Aye.
Disharum, Feldman.
Motion carried. Information regarding the resolution declaration of trust is included in the packet. Are there any questions? May I please have a motion to approve the resolution?
I move to approve the resolution declaration of trust as presented.
Thank you, Mrs. Holzhauser. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Disharum. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Holzhauser,
Aye.
Disharum,
Aye.
Feldman,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Humbles,
Aye.
Wisdom,
Aye.
Wagenbach.
Aye.
Motion carried. This concludes the action items portion of the meeting. Information regarding the starting blocks at the Dunlap High School pool area is included in the packet. Are there any questions? May I please have a motion to approve the starting blocks? Oh, wait a minute. I think we have
No,
something
it's
else.
a different motion on that.
Yeah, we're
As part of the pool renovation work, we had a bid to replace the starting blocks. And there were certain conditions that had to be made with that. And one was they have to fit into the existing system that we have. And we were assured that it could be done. And then the company that was going to do that work advised us that they can't really do that, and they have an alternative scheme, and if they do, it means going back and getting a permit, which again, we all know could be an issue with us losing our grandfathering. And in addition, that kind of watered down resolution for the new starting blocks was going to cost almost the same amount. And so I discussed this with the athletic director. Again, I was the chair of that committee, and we've decided we think it'd be best to just table those starting blocks altogether right now while we've got other more important things to focus on and with the budget constraints that we have. So we would propose to hold off on that for the time being and deal with it later.
What would that cost approximately?
It's $27,000.
I agree to wait,
Can they work? What do you have?
Oh, yeah,
and they're not unsafe. I don't-
yeah. They're ancient, but they work. And
Okay, so,
I move to table the DHS pool starting blocks as presented.
thank you, Mrs.
Second.
Disher. Thank you, Mr. Wagenbach. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Disharum. Wagenbach. Wisdom.
Aye.
Humbles.
Aye.
Olshauser. Henry. Feldman.
This concludes the action items portion of the meeting. May I please have a motion to adjourn closed session?
I move to adjourn to closed session for the following purposes as stated in the Open Meetings Act: the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, student disciplinary cases, discussion of minutes of meetings lawfully closed, collective negotiating matters, security procedures, purchase or lease of real property, and litigation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wisdom. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Olshauser. Aye. Wisdom. Wagenbach.
Aye.
Humbles.
Aye.
Henry. Disharum. Feldman.
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone. I walked in, it was there, I'm like, oh, that's such a pretty color, I'm like, and I usually don't laugh at no person, but I'm like,
Max for the minimum, please. Max for the minimum.
I got, I showed them on.
Are we?
Yes.
Who's, is David representing?
An email.
I think David is. We got Todd, and Katie, and Jason. Yep, we're good. No. Right. Yep.